I found out I had a twin stolen at birth. My parents were paid to stay silent, and now I'm exposing the hospital that covered it all up. I always thought I knew my family. My parents were loving but private, and while we weren't the type to spill every secret, I never had any reason to think they were hiding anything serious. That changed last week. It started when I was helping clean out the attic. My mom had asked me to grab an old box of holiday decorations. But while I was up there, I noticed another box shoved in the back, covered in dust. It had my birth year written on the side in faded marker. I don't know what made me open it. Call it curiosity, instinct, whatever. But the moment I lifted the lid, my stomach twisted. Inside were baby clothes, old hospital bracelets, and a couple of yellowed papers. I picked up a birth certificate and saw my name on it. Nothing unusual, but underneath it was another one. With a different name. Same last name, same birth date. My first thought was that it was a mistake, a clerical error. But something about it felt off. I took the box downstairs and asked my parents about it, half laughing like, "Hey, did I have an evil twin you never told me about?" I expected them to roll their eyes, maybe make a joke. Instead, my mom went pale. My dad wouldn't even look at me. That's when I knew. This wasn't a mistake. After what felt like forever, my mom started crying. My dad muttered, "We weren't supposed to talk about this." And finally, after hours of pressing them, they told me the truth. I had a twin. A real, actual twin. But here's the kicker. They don't know where he is. Apparently, when my mom gave birth, there was some kind of mix-up at the hospital. Another couple had a baby at the same time, and somehow the hospital mistakenly gave them my twin while my parents were giving me. The hospital realized the mistake later, but by then, it was too late. The other couple had already left, and instead of coming clean, the hospital covered it up. My parents wanted to fight it. They wanted to find my brother. But the hospital convinced them it would be impossible, that the other family wouldn't want to give him up. Lawyers got involved, NDAs were signed, and my parents were essentially forced to accept that their son was gone. They never told me because they didn't want me to grow up knowing I had a missing twin I could never meet. I don't know how to process this. I spent 25 years believing I was an only child, but somewhere out there there's another me. And now I have to decide. Do I try to find him, or do I let this secret stay buried like my parents did? I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was the other birth certificate, the name I'd never heard before but was somehow connected to me. My twin. I wanted answers, but my parents were still too shaken to talk, and my mom kept crying. My dad kept saying, "It's in the past," like that was supposed to fix anything. So I took matters into my own hands. First thing in the morning, I went back up to the attic. I tore through every box, every stack of papers, hoping there was something, anything that would tell me more. That's when I found it. An old, locked filing cabinet. I yanked at the drawers, but they wouldn't budge. So I did the next logical thing. I searched my parents' room for a key. And before you judge me, I know it was invasive, but seriously, they hid a whole human from me. I think I earned a little snooping. I finally found the key in my dad's nightstand, stuffed in the back under a pile of old receipts. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the cabinet and pulled the drawers open. Inside there were old tax documents, medical bills, and then buried beneath everything else, a faded manila folder labeled Settlement Agreement. Bingo. I flipped it open and saw pages of legal jargon, but one thing stood out immediately. A hospital name. Greenbrook Medical Center. I'd never heard of it before. It wasn't where my parents ever mentioned I was born. And then, further down, I saw it. A check. Or more accurately, a photocopy of one. $250,000 paid to my parents from the hospital. My stomach dropped. They were paid to keep quiet. I knew then that this wasn't just some tragic accident. Someone, maybe the hospital, maybe someone else, wanted the story buried. And for the past 25 years, my parents had gone along with it. I took a picture of the check and the hospital name before putting everything back exactly how I found it. I had a lead now. I just had to figure out what to do with it. After finding out the hospital had shut down, I hit a dead end. No active phone numbers, no official records online, nothing. But I wasn't about to let that stop me. I decided to start small. If Greenbrook Medical Center was a real hospital, there had to be people who remembered it. Former employees, old patients, someone had to know something. I started by searching Facebook. I found a local history group for the town where the hospital used to be and posted something casual like, "Hey, does anyone remember Greenbrook Medical Center? My parents told me I was born there, but I can't find much info on it. I'm just curious." Didn't mention my twin. Didn't mention the settlement. Just fishing for info. For a few hours, nothing happened. Then out of nowhere, I got a DM from a random account. "Stop looking. Some things should stay buried." That was it. No profile picture, no posts, just a blank account with a generic name. My stomach flipped. I tried replying, but before I could even type anything, the account deleted itself. Now, I don't know about you, but normal that people don't send cryptic threats to strangers on the internet over a hospital that shut down 15 years ago. So yeah, now I'm freaked out. But also, now I know there's something here. If this was just a simple hospital closure, why would someone go out of their way to tell me to stop looking? I went back to my post, and a few people had commented. Most were just reminiscing. "Oh yeah, my uncle worked there." Or, "I was born there too, but it closed randomly." But then one person left something that caught my attention. "Greenbrook? Oh man, that place was shut down over some crazy lawsuit. Babies got switched or something. I don't remember the details, but it was a huge mess. Babies got switched." I immediately messaged the guy, asking if he remembered more. He said he was just a kid at the time, but his mom worked as a nurse there and used to talk about it. I asked if I could talk to his mom. He left me on red. Now, I don't know if he's ghosting me or just doesn't want to get involved, but I'm not stopping here. If this guy's mom really worked there, she might know the truth about what happened the day I was born. Well, I need to find her. Alright, so things got way weirder since my last update. Remember the guy who said his mom worked at Greenbrook Medical Center? Yeah, well, he finally replied, but not with a message. He called me. I picked up, and before I could even say hello, he whispered, "She doesn't want to talk, but she told me something you need to hear." I grabbed a notebook and told him to go on. He said his mom was a nurse at Greenbrook for over a decade. She wasn't there when it happened, but she was there during the aftermath, when everything went down. According to her, a lawsuit was filed against the hospital by two families who claimed their newborns were switched. The hospital fought it hard, buried the case under illegal red tape, and eventually paid off both families to make it disappear. Two families. I asked him if his mom knew their names. He hesitated, then said, "She only remembers one, the Andersons." I wrote it down immediately. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. "She told me there was another case, too. Another baby mix-up that didn't go public. That's probably yours." I nearly dropped the phone. I asked if his mom had any way of confirming that. He just sighed. She said records were destroyed when the hospital shut down, but she remembers nurses whispering about a hidden case, one where the parents were pressured to accept the mistake and move on. Pressured. Like how my parents signed an NDA and never told me. I thanked him and hung up, my head spinning. The Andersons. That was the first real lead I had. I immediately started searching online. Tons of results popped up, but none were obviously connected to Greenbrook. No old lawsuits, no news articles. Then I tried a different approach. I searched Anderson Greenbrook Hospital of Birth. And something finally came up. A 25-year-old post on a genealogy forum. It was from a woman named Linda Anderson, asking about hospital mix-ups in the 90s. The post was ancient, but her profile was still active. I sent her a message. "Hi, Linda. I came across your post about Greenbrook Medical Center. I think I might be connected to what you were looking for. Please message me back." Now I just have to wait. And honestly, I have no idea what I'm about to uncover. He was confused, that she was exhausted, that she just didn't remember clearly. And for years she tried to believe them. But when her son was about 5 years old, she started noticing things. Features that didn't match hers or her husband's. A blood type that made no sense. She brought it up to doctors, but they brushed her off. Then when he turned 18, she finally convinced him to take a DNA test. The results came back, and just like she feared, he wasn't related to her. At all. Her world collapsed. She went back to Greenbrook, but it was already shut down. She tried to sue, but by then everything was buried. No records, no proof, just her word against nothing. But now she had me. I asked her straight up, "Do you think your son could be my twin?" She hesitated, then said, "I don't know. But if your story is real, If Greenbrook really paid your parents to stay quiet, then maybe. Neither of us spoke for a while, then she whispered, I want to meet you. I didn't even have to think about it. Me too. We agreed to meet in person. She's bringing her son. If he's my twin, I'll know. I'll feel it, right? I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm about to meet my brother, if this is just another dead end. But I do know one thing. I'm about to find out the truth. I barely slept last night. My brain was on overdrive, cycling through a million possibilities. What if he really was my twin? What if he wasn't? What if he was, but he didn't care? By the time I got to the cafe where we agreed to meet, my stomach was in knots. I got there first, grabbed a table near the back, and waited. Every time the door opened, my heart jumped. Then finally I saw them. Linda walked in first. She was older, but you could tell she'd been beautiful when she was younger. High cheekbones, deep-set eyes. Behind her was a guy about my age, and the moment I saw him, I knew. It was like looking into a slightly different version of myself. Same height, same build, same frickin' face. I swear to God, it was like the air got knocked out of my lungs. He saw me and froze. For a second, we just stared at each other. I think we were both trying to process it at the same time. Then Linda grabbed his arm and whispered, Ethan! Ethan. That's his name. That's my brother's name. He walked over slowly, eyes wide, and when he finally sat down across from me, the first thing he said was, Holy shit. Yeah, holy shedong indeed. Linda was already crying. She reached for my hand, squeezing it like she was afraid I'd disappear. I could barely think, let alone speak, but somehow I managed to say, I think we need a DNA test. Ethan just let out this breathless laugh. Dude, I don't think we need one. But we're doing it anyway. Because this is too big to just go off a gut feeling. We talked for hours about our lives, our parents, everything we'd missed out on. And the whole time I couldn't shake this weird mix of emotions. Excitement, anger, grief for the life we never got to have. Linda kept apologizing. She kept saying, I should have fought harder. I should have known. But how could she have? The hospital lied. They gaslit her. My parents were paid off to keep quiet. By the end of it, Ethan looked me dead in the eyes and said, if this test comes back positive, we have to do something. We can't let them get away with it. And I think he's right, because someone needs to pay for this. And the DNA test results just came in. I opened the email with Ethan on a video call. Neither of us spoke. We just stared at the screen like two idiots, too scared to click. Then finally, I took a deep breath and opened it. 99.9% match. Ethan is my twin. I don't even know how to describe what I felt in that moment. Relief, rage, grief. It was like everything at once. Ethan just laughed. Not because it was funny, but because what else do you even do in a situation like this? He ran a hand through his hair, still staring at the screen, and muttered, Holy shit, dude. We were right. Yeah, we were right. But now that we knew the truth, the real question was, what do we do about it? Linda was heartbroken. She kept apologizing, kept saying, I should have fought harder. I should have known. But the truth is, she did fight. She was just up against a hospital that wanted her to lose. And my parents? Oh, I was about to find out exactly how much they lied to me. Because after I hung up with Ethan, I called them, and I told them I knew everything. The call that changed everything. The second my mom picked up, I didn't even let her say hello. I took a DNA test. Silence. I could hear her breathing, but she didn't say a word. Ethan is my twin, I said. I met him. I met Linda. I know everything. Still nothing. Then finally she whispered something. You weren't supposed to find out. My stomach dropped. She knew. All these years she knew and just let me live a lie. How could you do this? I demanded. How could you take money to keep quiet about your own son? That's when she started crying. I could barely understand her, but she kept saying things like, we didn't have a choice, and we did what we thought was best. I called bullshit. My dad finally got on the phone then. His voice was cold. You need to drop this, he said. There's nothing you can do now. It's over. I felt like I got sucker punched. Over? I repeated. You think this is just over? I lost my brother. I lost an entire life I was supposed to have. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. We weren't the only ones who took the money. I froze. What does that mean? I asked. He hesitated. Then in the coldest, most unapologetic voice, he said, "Ask Ethan's parents what they were paid to keep quiet." And then he hung up. After my dad's cryptic comment, I called Ethan immediately. "We need to talk," I said. I told him everything, how my parents admitted they took the money, how they said his parents were paid off too. Ethan went dead silent. Then finally he muttered, "No way. No effing way." But the thing is, I could hear it in his voice, the doubt, the fear, because suddenly he was realizing something I had already learned the hard way. Parents lie. The confrontation. We decided to go straight to the source. Ethan called his mom and put her on speaker. "Mom, did you and Dad take money from Greenbrook Hospital?" Boom. No build-up, no sugarcoating. Linda sounded shocked. "What? Of course not! Where is this coming from?" Then Ethan told her what my dad had said. That my parents weren't the only ones who took a payout. I swear I heard her breath catch. And that was it. That was all it took. I knew. Ethan knew. She was hiding something. "Mom," Ethan pushed, "tell me the truth." Another pause. Then in the softest voice, she whispered, "It wasn't supposed to come out like this." My stomach dropped. Ethan went completely still. "What do you mean?" he asked, voice dangerously quiet. She took a shaky breath. Then she confessed. They knew. Not the full truth, not from the beginning. But years ago, when she started questioning things, when the DNA test proved Ethan wasn't hers, the hospital reached out. They offered money. A settlement. Hush money. And she took it. "I didn't know what else to do," she sobbed. "We loved you, Ethan. We didn't want to lose you." Ethan just stared at the phone, completely frozen. "So you chose money over the truth?" I asked, my voice cold. She didn't answer. But she didn't deny it. They weren't victims. They were a part of the cover-up. The fallout? Ethan hung up without another word. For a long time we just sat there processing. Then Ethan laughed, a sharp, bitter laugh. "Dude, I don't even know who I am anymore." I knew exactly how he felt, because our whole lives we were told we belonged, that we had families who loved us, who wanted us. But the truth? We were bought. And now we had a choice. We could let this break us, or we could make them pay for what they did. Ethan and I spent the next 48 hours digging. If Greenbrook Medical Center had paid off our parents, how many others had they silenced? How many families had been ripped apart without ever knowing the truth? We started with public records, news archives, anything we could find. But just like before, Greenbrook barely existed online. No lawsuits, no scandals, nothing. It was like they were wiped off the map. But then we found something. Not a lawsuit, not a confession, an obituary. Dr. Richard Calloway, former head of Greenbrook Medical Center, died in 2013, and buried in the article, one single line that sent chills down my spine. Dr. Calloway retired from medicine after the closure of Greenbrook Medical Center, following controversy over the patient record discrepancies. That was the word they used. Not malpractice, not switched babies, just a vague little word that meant everything, because we weren't the only ones. We couldn't be. The journalist Ethan and I agreed. We needed to go bigger. We needed someone who could blow this up. So we reached out to a journalist, someone local, someone who had covered Greenbrook before. We found a woman named Sarah Mitchell, an investigative reporter who had written about shady hospital closures. We emailed her, laying out the basics, the switch, the payout, the DNA proof. Not even 20 minutes later, she responded, "We need to talk. I think I know another family this happened to." My hands went numb. This wasn't just about us anymore. There were others. And if Sarah was right, we might have proof that Greenbrook didn't just make a mistake. They covered up a crime. The night before the meeting with Sarah, I barely got any sleep. My mind kept circling the same question. How many more? Ethan and I met her at a small coffee shop, and she wasted no time getting to the point. She pulled out a thick folder, her expression serious, and slid it across the table. Inside was a stack of documents, birth records, hospital's discharge forms, medical reports, all from Greenbrook, all flagged with inconsistencies. One name stood out at the top of a file, Madeline Porter. Sarah explained that Madeline was another victim of Greenbrook's deception. Her parents had always felt something was off. She was the only redhead in a family of brunettes, and her blood type didn't match either parent. When they finally did a DNA test, it confirmed their worst fears. She wasn't biologically related to them, but by the time they started asking questions, Greenbrook was already gone. No records, no explanations, just silence. They had no way of finding out where their real daughter was, or whose child they had raised. Ethan and I sat there, trying to absorb it. This wasn't just a mistake. Greenbrook had taken multiple children from their families, and they had covered it up so well that most people never even found out. Sarah hesitated before speaking again. She made it clear that this story was big, potentially national, but she needed to know if Ethan and I were willing to go public, if we were ready to expose everything. We barely had to think about it. We weren't just doing this for ourselves anymore. This was about every single family Greenbrook stole from. It was time for the truth to come out.